Wrestling with the Future is live and on the air. We are broadcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and on 270 radio stations around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Mad Dog DeCipio. Welcome yet again to another episode of Wrestling with the Future. Tonight, a returning guest, and he's a good one. But before we get to him, let's introduce my co-host. Her name is the Firecracker, Amelia Firecracker Chapman, and she's back for more punishment. I mean, she's back to learn more about wrestling. How are you, Amelia?
I do great. How are you?
Well, I'm here. Here I am. I'm good. So you were excited about this show tonight. You did your homework.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you better do. We do our homework around here. You know,
Did you put? By the way, did you put the link on Facebook for everyone?
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
I just got a message from someone.
I'm a Lincoln machine, baby. Let me tell you something. Absolutely. Our guest tonight is John Cosper. He is an author, and not just an author, by the way, but he's one hell of an author. And not just wrestling books, by the way, folks. All kinds of fiction, nonfiction, hybrids of historical fiction, and made up stuff, and figments of his imagination and other people's imagination, by the way. John, welcome to the show. It's a great pleasure to have you back again.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. It's great to talk to you guys.
Should tell everybody, John joined us on the episode about Wahoo McDaniel with Wahoo's widow, my friend Karen McDaniel, and John had the eventful pleasure, I call it eventful pleasure, of working side by side with Karen. She's a character. You have to know Karen. She is a unique individual and quite outspoken. So I want to start off talking about that. A couple of things just to tidy up from your appearance with Karen here.
Sure.
I never did get, because Karen, she's just monopolized the conversation, But we never had a chance to find out whether the two of you actually had a chance to corroborate with each other in person, or was everything done remotely?
Everything was done remotely. We have not had a chance to meet in person or work together in person. Certainly hope to get out and work some shows with her and spend some time with her in person down the road. But and same's true, unfortunately, at this point for Princess Victoria and Johnny Candido. I've never actually met them face to face, but I'm trying to work it out where Vicky and I can do a show sometime this spring. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'll tell you what, I feel kind of responsible for Princess Victoria's book, because I was the one that hooked you up with her. I don't know if you know that or not.
I know that Scott Sela given her my name as well. So I do appreciate that. Yep.
Well, I can't take credit then, damn it.
No, you were the one who hooked me up with Karen. Karen said you sent Karen straight to me. So for sure you can bask in that one for sure.
Okay, I'll take my cut off the top. No.
There you go. There you go.
No.
And a mention in the book.
What was that?
He does.
And a mention in the book.
He does get a mention in the book.
Well, I tell you what,
where credit's due.
I do get. I'll tell you what, I do get mentioned in a lot of books. Thank you, Jimmy Valiant, handsome Jimmy Valiant, page 564. That's me. Also, and I need to do this while we're talking about books. Thank you to Ann Walsh and Marianne Howard, the authors of Shadow of a Baseman. I had the pleasure of writing the review and the foreword to that book. It is available everywhere across the country. The books are sold. B. Dalton Bookseller, Barnes & Noble, all over the place. On Amazon.com, of course, lest we forget the internet. But people still go to bookstores.
Oh, absolutely.
So, John, with that in mind, people going to bookstores, are your books sold exclusively online, or are they in bookstores? How can people get a John Cosper book?
Yes.
They are exclusively online. Everything that I've written that's in publication is on Amazon.com.
Great.
And then my wrestling books, most of them are available. You can get signed copies at eatsleepwrestle.com. And my fiction stuff is available through johncosper.com.
Yes.
Fabulous. Amelia, questions for John?
Out of all the books you've written, which is your favorite so far?
That's a hard one.
Mhm.
That's like asking which
yeah,
is his favorite.
there's so many. There's so many. I'll tell you with the wrestling books, the one guy I keep going
Mhm.
back to watch and
Mhm.
still enjoy is Candido.
Uh-huh.
Chris Candido is just one of
Mhm.
he has so much joy and so much love for wrestling,
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter what company he was in. I don't care if it's the Body Donnas. I don't care if it's Chris Candido with
Mhm.
IWA Mid South. I don't care if it's Chris Candido with ECW. The guy knew how to entertain.
Yeah, he
He's
sure
probably
did.
the one wrestler I probably still watch the most
Mhm.
out of the ones.
Yeah.
I miss Tracy Smothers dearly.
Oh my
I
God.
Oh yes.
loved working with Tracy.
That was a
Uh,
shocker. Yeah.
love getting texts from him or just getting a random
Mhm.
phone call from him or something.
Yeah.
Madman Pondo's a guy that I went after and I said, you got to tell
Mhm.
your story.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could do this every one of my books. You know,
Oh
Black
yes.
Panther, Jim Mitchell's Louisville's Greatest
Yes.
Show.
Yeah.
On the fiction side, I'll tell you the one I
Yes.
really am proud of
Uh-huh.
right now is the latest one, which is called Dead Park Plaza.
Yes, I saw
Yes.
that one.
It
I
is
love that.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
I've got it right here. It is.
Oh
I'm
yes.
actually
Mhm.
working on a sequel to it right now. I finished the first draft this week, but
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Dead Park Plaza is a collection of short stories.
Mhm.
7 short stories. They all take place in the
Mhm.
same 4-story office building, and
Mhm.
it's horror comedy mostly. And
I love that
there-
kind of ring.
there's a
Yes.
little bit of there's there's mystery as to what's going on, and there's
Mhm.
monsters, there's vampires and stuff like that, and a
Mhm.
lot of silliness too. But and working on a sequel to it right now. I'm real excited to get that one out probably this summer.
Mhm. Oh, wonderful! I can't wait to see it.
Yep.
So we talked about Wahoo McDaniel
Mhm.
and Karen McDaniel.
Mhm.
For all intents and purposes, that is your latest book,
Yes.
the
Mhm.
one that's available right now. But you
Mhm.
do have one in the works, and I don't want you to talk about it just yet. I want people to leave them in suspense a little bit. I want to talk to you about these books, and I want everybody to take a look at this. These are just some, and I put on here just some of the books authored by John Cosper. Princess Victoria, Tears, Triumphs, and Turnbuckles. I love the title of that book.
I love that. Yeah.
Louisville's Greatest Show, the story of the Allen Athletic Club, Grappling by Gaslight. That fascinating titles, and we're going to talk about that in a second too.
Sure.
Here's Candido, no gimmicks needed.
Yep.
And he was a hell of a nice guy, by the way, and just all the time,
Mhm.
just a straight up nice guy. Chris was a great fellow.
Mhm.
Tracy Smothers. And I love the title of that. If you don't buy this book, everybody dies.
All right.
Dead
The
Park
alternate
Plaza?
title was Tracing the Three Bears.
Yeah, exactly. Big Bad Good Night. I'm going to talk to you about this book.
Fairy Tales meets film noir. We definitely got to talk about that one.
Yeah, for sure. Where did Space Cat come from?
It was an idea, just kind of, I like sci-fi, I like laser guns, I like spaceships and all that. And, just kind of a story of a woman who's a cyborg, and she's a bounty hunter and on a mission to go and rescue her daughter. There's a distress signal in space, and it's just pure pulp space opera.
And talk to me about this evil incarnate snowman.
Oh, Frank Jordan, Evil Snowman. That was
exactly.
My kid's favorite bedtime story.
Evil Snowman.
Frank Jordan, Evil Snowman. I got a wonderful artist named Rick McGee to do the illustrations for it, and we did a full color illustrated version of it. But it's a story of a little boy who builds not just a snowman, but an evil snowman.
Yeah.
And of course, the snowman starts to stalk him, and letting him know, hey, I'm Frank Jordan. I'm going to get you. And this is ultimately there's a confrontation between the little boy and the snowman. But my kids love that story. It was one that I just kind of made up off the cuff at bedtime, and I had to tell it every night for quite a while. So
it's a fascinating. I'm it's almost I'm almost as interested in the titles as I am the contents of the book, because I want to know where does the mind go. Amelia, you know where I'm going at with
yes,
right?
Exactly. The idea.
Where does one's mind have to reside to come up with some of the working titles? You know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going
about it, John.
Well, I appreciate that because titles are. I don't like writing titles.
Makes you want to open the
They're
book
hard.
and say, "What is this
They're
about?"
hard. Yeah, they're titles are sometimes really hard. You know, I'll just go through some of the fiction ones. Like Frank Jordan, Evil Snowman. That was the name of the snowman in the story. Between Us, it goes back to. I'm a big SNL guy. Can you guess what sketch from the 70s?
Oh God, yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Fred Garvin, male prostitute. So, where's my, it just that patter, that Dan Aykroyd type thing. That's where that came from. Dead Park Plaza. That was kind of a challenging one to piece together because again, it's and what happened with that was I was in the car, I was driving one day and realized I had these 3 story ideas that were all horror stories that took place in an office. And one had been a screenplay idea. One was a story idea. My dad texted to me a couple days before he went in the hospital, and also 2.5 weeks later just very suddenly diagnosed with cancer and passed away, like literally a year ago as I'm speaking to you. I think a year ago, it might have been a year ago today or yesterday that I got that text that they had the idea. And then the third one was kind of a joke idea I'd had for years about what if you did a parody of Lord of the Flies, but call it Lord of the Files, where the boss dies, keels over first thing in the morning, and the whole office goes tribal by the end of the day.
Oh,
so yeah, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I kept finding more and just pulling these old ideas, these half-baked ideas together. And okay, this makes a story, this makes a story, and putting them in short story format rather than than trying to stretch them into something else. And then I needed a name for the building, and I came up with Lead Park was a former munitions plant for the military. It was demolished, and they built this office building. They built a shopping mall. They built a neighborhood. But because of the mystery surrounding the place, the locals call it Dead Park. So Dead Park Plaza was the name on that one. The Big Bad Goodnight, you had mentioned that one a moment ago. Like I said, it's fairy tales meets film noir. And I'd written a short story called The Big Bad Goodnight years ago, and it was kind of centered on the big bad wolf. He's just the down on his luck drifter from the old noir films and trying to make one last score so he can get out of town was kind of the premise of that. But I ended up writing several other stories that were kind of noir fairy tales. And I'll tell you, my favorite one in the book is, if you're a fan of Cape Fear, it's Cape Fear mixed with Goldilocks and the Three Bears, with Goldilocks in the Robert Mitchum role. Stalking the bears for the very specific reason. And but Big Bad Goodnight was a perfect title, just a perfect title for the book. And that's another one I'm really proud of. Actually, I did a special edition of that one, updated it last spring with an additional story, and also got together with another illustrator, same guy who did the cover for Grappling by Gaslight. And he did illustrations throughout the book, so there's an illustration tied to each one of the stories now.
John, walk me through this interesting book here, Robot Girlfriend.
That's another.
I know there's a story behind it. That's why I pulled this particular one up.
Right, and that one's a short story compilation, and that's the title of a specific story. I'm a big fan of the Asimov books and the 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not harm a human. A robot must obey orders unless it counteracts the first law. And a robot, must do everything to protect itself unless it counters the first 2 laws. And the idea occurred to me, what if a robot discovered that humans could be harmed emotionally as well as physically? That's kind of the premise behind Robot Girlfriend is you have a guy who, has one night stand after another, and he has a house robot whose job it is to see the girls, make them breakfast and see them out in the morning. But the robot discovers, wait a minute, this girl will be seriously harmed emotionally if I tell her, this guy's not going to call you. So he starts to lead the girl on. And that's kind of the premise of that story. But that one has, Robot Girlfriend's actually spawned 6 or 7 short films. Some folks like there's a guy named Herschel Zahn III. There's a wonderful lady named Cindy Maples who's turned 2 of them into films. And they played at some horror film festivals and short film festivals around the country. One of my favorites is called The Telemarketer. And here's another one. It was just kind of a what if in the future, instead of calling you on the phone, salesmen would just teleport into your living room unexpectedly and try to sell you a vacuum cleaner. So that was kind of the premise behind that one.
That one's funny.
Cindy, man, it's actually, if you go to johncosper.com, go to the films page, there's a link where you can watch the movie. And Cindy turned it into a wonderful little film. It's really
I'm a super fan of short films. People who watch this show know that. We also have a very dear friend of the show, Mike Messier, who is an award-winning, and you know who Mike is.
Yeah.
He's an award-winning actor, director, producer, filmmaker extraordinaire. He's an accomplished beyond his years. It's just where he gets this talent from is beyond me. But I knew about some of the short films that were derived from Robot Girlfriend, and that's why I wanted that one. The other one is on the screen in front of us. Tales from the Dad's Side. Now, I could have used this a long time ago. When I was raising children. Now they're all grown and they're raising me.
Yeah.
The stories in that book came from the same place as Frank Jordan. It came from bedtime and was, instead of reading stories, some nights I would make up stories. And sometimes I would get that was a good one, Daddy, or that wasn't very good, Daddy. But no, these were the favorites. These were the ones that passed muster. I had to tell over and over and over again. Yeah. I think the most favorite in that one is called You, That's Who. And it's about the dragon that goes for a walk. And he hears a voice in the tree that keeps saying who, and asking who he is, and the dragon has this, the dragon actually gets spooked and scared and runs off, and it's just an owl sitting in a tree. So the kids love that one. There's another one too, actually, another one about a dragon. It's about the princess who tries to teach the dragon manners, tries to teach him how to say please and thank you, and it's going really well until she tries to teach him to sneeze into his armpit. And of course, he burns himself. So, again, it was these are for my kids that are now, one's 14 and she's playing ice hockey, and one is going to be 13 in a couple weeks, and he's playing in a band. So I don't tell them these stories, brother. I still love them.
Bless your heart, man. I'll tell you what. Amelia.
Yes, sir.
Go for it. Question my guest.
Okay. When you were writing, and I know you write with all your heart and passion. What was the hardest thing for you to write about? Who was the hardest one to write about?
I mean, every book's got kind of different challenges. I don't know there was one that was like really a hard struggle. Sometimes with the fiction, you've got an idea that's just not working. You've got was working on a project this week, another potential sequel for Dead Park Plaza. I've got a story that I've worked with for years and years, and I got 30 pages into trying to make it fit within that Dead Park universe, and it just wasn't working. I just set it aside, and it'll sit in mothballs for however long, and at some point maybe I'll come back around to it. Like I said, with the first Dead Park Plaza, I had a screenplay. I had this idea for actually a horror film that I started writing multiple times back in the day, and I got 10 pages in, I got 20 pages in, 30 pages in, and it just wasn't going anywhere. And
John, I got a question
for you.
It was
the right time and the right moment. Yeah, sorry.
Right along what you're talking about, it just dawned on me. You've written so many varied books from one topic to one genre to whatever the case may be, all over the place, right? Is it hard for you to pick up where you left off at and be cohesive and have that continuity, or is it natural for you? I've talked to lots of authors who say they struggle sometimes, who say, "Oh, it's like getting on a bike; you don't forget how to do it." What's your process for like picking up where you left off? If you've got like 2 or 3 things going on.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a good thing for me a lot of times. For a number, actually up through last summer, in addition to all of this, I was writing children's ministry curriculum for a Sunday school publisher. And it was just having the very things to jump between was actually, it's like, okay, I get stuck here, but I could get going someplace else, and it was interesting how, well, I need to set this one aside for a moment. I go work on something else. And then the idea that I was trying to figure out, the problem I had, okay, now I can go back to it. Now I got to fix it. So, and then I'm missing a deadline over here. So no, I didn't miss any deadlines, but for me, it's always, it's nice to have that release to be able to step away.
Well, you know what? Jokingly, you said something, but there's kind of a serious connotation to that. Do you ever find yourself up against the clock? Right? I'm guessing like a lot of people now, you're
Mm-hmm.
self-published.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only deadline you have to meet is your own.
Mhm.
But do you find yourself inflicting deadlines on yourself as a matter of principle, or just because you're rigid or you're scheduled, or you want to have it out? What's your process for meeting your own personal deadlines?
Um, I'll for myself, I don't really set rigid deadlines.
Okay.
Kind of roughly in my head, I can tell you, I've got one project that I'm getting ready to work on that I'm hoping to get done by the end of March. I've got another project with a wrestler. They'll probably won't take very long. I'm hoping to get that one done, and
Mhm.
and then I've got two other guys that I'm hoping to work with, by the end of this year in particular. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't have set deadline. I mean, the projects
Yeah.
kind of have a natural life cycle, and they will come together
Mm-hmm.
when they come together.
Yeah.
Now with Dead Park, I did push really hard to get that one out by a certain time.
Yeah.
I had a horror film festival I wanted to be at in the fall, and I was at, and I had it out a couple months ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
With the sequel, I've got there's another one coming up this summer. I'm going to be at. I'm going to make that deadline for sure. But I give myself plenty of time. And,
Well, I'm asking because I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of people are.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate. I've written 2 books. My first book was called Stay Tuned, The Psychic Realm from a Theological Perspective. My second book was called Psychic Fingerprints, A Life's Manifesto. They're both of them were self-help books, how-to books, right?
Mhm.
And I found myself like putting great pressure on myself. And I'm a really laid back guy. I really am. As like, I'm just, Amelia will tell you, people who
Mm-hmm.
know me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, if I were any more laid back, I'd be taking a nap,
Yeah,
I'm
really,
not
he
even
would.
cool about that. But when
Yeah.
I'm writing, I become like, psycho driven. Like,
Mhm.
my head goes like at hyper speed. I have to fit. I gotta get it done. Gotta get it done. And that was rough for me. That's why I prompted that
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking. It prompted that question about,
Mm-hmm.
putting, maybe unnecessary for me. It was
Pressure.
anyway
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary deadlines. Now,
Yes.
Amelia, I
Uh-huh.
interrupted you, young lady.
I'm
So
sorry.
you are fortunate. I get to throw it back to you, and you get to ask more questions.
Thank.
How about that? I'm being generous tonight. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Whenever I know that you mentioned you have young children and they're in sports and things like that. Have you ever found yourself when you're at a game with one of and you find yourself with an idea, you have to write down, ideas really quickly before you forget them when you're at the game instead of watching your
Uh,
kids at the games?
Not necessarily the game, but yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah,
And it
it
used to
does,
be
doesn't it?
my quote unquote superpower, as my
Uh,
wife called it for
uh-huh.
10 plus years of our marriage, was I always had a pen. If somebody had a pen, oh,
Mhm,
John's got a pen, because I had a pen to write things down. Now I have the phone. I put it in
mhm,
notes. I've actually
mhm.
started carrying a pen and paper again, though, just
Yeah.
because I
Mhm,
asked for a watch for Christmas because I'm trying to yeah,
yeah.
I'm tired of picking. I need to know what time it is.
Mhm,
I pull my phone out and
mhm,
I get distracted. I'm reading tweets, I'm reading messages or whatever,
mhm.
and then I put the phone away. It's like I didn't even look at what time is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, trying to go back to that. Certainly I've had I've
Uh-huh.
had napkins. I remember one time writing an idea on a sweet and low packet.
Mhm.
Yeah. These things come to you, and
Yeah, they
you've got
do.
to get them down, and you've got to
Mhm,
so you don't forget them. There
mhm,
was something late last night, and I had
mhm,
just I had one file, my to-do list file pulled up on my computer.
mhm,
I just typed it out right there real quick, and it was
mhm,
there, when I was ready to come back to it.
mhm,
As a side note to that,
mhm.
Bob Dylan wrote "Times They Are a Changin'" on a bar napkin.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
True
But
enough.
the story on Blaze of Glory, John Bon Jovi, is they were filming the
Mhm,
first movie and they were sitting in a Denny's, and he
mhm.
told
Yeah.
Emilio Estevez, "I'm going to write a theme song for the second movie," and he
Yeah.
wrote Blaze of Glory, wrote the lyrics on a napkin in
Yeah.
Denny's, and
At
he's
the
like, "We
Denny's.
haven't even finished the first movie yet." He says it's going to be a hit, and I'm writing the
That's
song for it.
Oh, that's
absolutely true.
Yep.
That's
yeah.
absolute. That is. I happen to know that story
Mhm.
factually.
Yeah.
and heard it from one of the guys in the band. I know that's a true
Sure.
story.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he actually has family about an hour away from where I live here. He came to visit about a month ago, believe it or not.
Who, John?
Yeah,
No, he's a
Cool.
Jersey boy. You know that, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
We claim him.
In Newport Richey, Florida.
He hasn't screwed up yet, so we're letting him in the state.
Right?
Amelia.
Yeah.
I interrupt you again. I'm sorry.
No,
I
no,
hardly
you're
ever
good.
do that,
You're
John, by the way. I hardly
you're
ever
fine.
interrupt anybody.
You're fine.
He's fine.
Amelia,
No,
shut
yes.
up, Amelia. I'm interrupting you for a minute. Go ahead. Go for it.
It's okay. No, I know what you mean because I tend to write poetry, but I've gotten like away from it because of work and everything like that. So I know exactly what you mean. I write down in the middle of the night. I'll write it down real quick, and I was like, wait a minute, when did I write this? Or I was like, oh yeah, I remember that now. But in the brain stuff like that. But yeah, I know
it
exactly.
happens sometimes. I'll be on, because I'm trying to work out now. I go to Planet Fitness. I'll be on the treadmill and I'll pull the phone out. I got to write this idea down. This has got to go in. It's fun too watching. The Ned Park books have been really fun because there are so many little ideas that. I've had this idea here, this idea, or somebody pitched me this, somebody pitched me, and they all of a sudden, oh wait, this fits here. Wait, this fits here, and it all comes together. And then it's like, okay, where am I going to go with the story? Some innocuous detail I put in the first chapter. Well, there you go, right there. And just it's fun watching. Your mind make those connections, and it's I probably I'll say it probably stems too from years of doing theater and improv and everything like that, and learning how to make those connections and learning how to loop things back and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great tools, by the way. Improv is great.
Absolutely.
Oh, I loved it. When I was in high school, we used to have to do that to a chair, like pretending we were arguing with the chair, and the chair was empty. And I was like, okay, what am I going to think about doing? What am I going to be arguing with you about? And I had to pretend there was somebody there. Yeah, it was.
to bring it back to. I was saying to bring. Yeah, just to bring it back to wrestling, one of the stories Dean Hill told me in the first edition I wrote of Bluegrass Brawlers is they would one of the games they loved to play when they had the developmental guys was called Stump Proto. Proto being short for prototype, which was John Cena's name. And they would put him in the ring and they would throw them as bizarre things at him they possibly could. Cut a promo on a fruit cup. Cut a promo, you're doing a fatal 4-way against Snap, Crackle, and Pop. And Cena would just go. There would never be any or anything like that. He would just go. They said he was so naturally gifted at that at the ring.
I'll tell you what, and not to interrupt you, John, but to right along what you're talking about. Classic modern day example of that.
Yes.
Eric Bischoff got his audition from AWA to WWF by selling a broom to Vince McMahon. He said, here's the broom. Tell me why this is the greatest broom in the world. Never did an or an or an and nothing.
You can't do that.
Straight like a salesman, door to door, like the old Fuller Brush guys.
Yeah.
That's what got him the job. An audition with a freaking broom, of all things. But, John, you brought it back to wrestling. And that's what I want to talk to you about. We want to talk a little bit tonight about the differences in style and philosophy writing for wrestlers as opposed to writing anything else. You've written a number of incredibly poignant wrestling books. And it's no secret. Every wrestler has a story to tell. Most of the stories they tell are kayfabe to some extent. God knows Bruno Sammartino, rest in peace, champ. Who I knew. Bruno went to his dying breath kayfabing. He never let anything go. It was all work with Bruno. Here's the question, John. How do you translate shoot to paper? Do you know when someone's BSing you?
I'll be honest, not always. And it's, I mean, there's certainly different ways you can approach things like that. What I set out as my goal with every single book that I write is I'm telling this person's story in the way they want it told. does kayfabe get through sometimes? Sure, but I worked with Kenny Bolin on that was one of the first biographies I worked on. And my
I'm
goodness,
sorry.
I mean, Kenny Bolin's the guy who never lets the truth get in the way of a good story. So
I love.
I personally made up a lot of details in that book, and Kenny doesn't even know they're in there because he hasn't read it.
I know.
But for me, I mean, there are different books for different people. There are the folks who like they like the records, they like the stats and the results and everything. There are people who like the stories. And my goal is to tell the stories in a way that honors them and tells them the best way. I think probably the biographies, are that I've done, like Candido's book and like Wahoo's book, are going to be a lot more factual, a lot more probing and in depth. And for example, the Wahoo story about him running from Norman to Chickasha, I've got 3 different versions of that in the book, because it was, and that's another thing too, is I listened to Malcolm Gladwell. He's talked a lot about memory and how people's memories our memories are not as accurate as we think they are. So, to me, you have to put in the multiple stories, because, there's probably a kernel of truth in each one of them.
Well, here's a question that ties directly into that. Do you write differently for a living subject as opposed to a deceased individual?
Well, yeah, it's when you're working with a deceased individual, you're looking for every bit of nugget of truth you can find. You're looking for their stories. You're looking for stories from other people. You're looking at the historical records and everything. With a living person, they've come to you to tell their story. And for me, it starts with finding the interviews they've given and getting those stories that they've told 100 times down, and cross checking them to make sure that they've the facts on those stories, and then sitting down with them, letting them tell their story, and then piecing the narrative together and going to the sources, going to like wrestlingdata.com, going to the record books and verifying they were this place or that or whatever. But yeah, it is definitely a different process, because, with Karen and with Johnny, we were working on telling a static story, working on telling, finding the history and the facts about Candido, finding the history and the facts about Wahoo. And then when I'm working with Dr. D. David Schultz, David's coming to me going, this is my story. And when I'm working with Tracy, it's Tracy coming to me going, this is my story. And, Tracy had phenomenal memory and recall for a guy who had been hit in the head as many times as he had. What's interesting though is, we would go for an hour and a half, and he would tell me we'd spend one night doing 1984, one night doing 1985. And then we get it to about 92, 93 when he got his first real bad concussion. And he told 4 years worth of stories in one night in the same amount of time.
Yeah,
so it was just very interesting to see. I pointed that out to him later on as well. So, but no, I mean, and one of the things that I do after the fact is, I've got different readers that I go to on different projects, and hey, can you double check me for facts on this one? Because I want to get it as accurate as possible. And there's,
well, you seem to pay great attention and even painstaking attention to the historical accuracy of your subjects. But what if the subject, and it's not such a big what if, because it happens all the time, particularly in wrestling books. What if the subject, the living subject, isn't being totally straight up with you? And that's a problem. I'll give you, before you answer that, I'm going to give you a very profound example that you probably already know. I'm going to give you this example. Scott Teal. I interviewed Scott, and Scott's a friend of mine. Everybody knows that. Scott's a friend of mine. He came on the show with Nikita Brezhnikov. We're talking about the art of writing wrestling books. And he was asked to write Vader, Leon White's book, Vader.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, Scott, and it's on the record, so I'm not telling tales out of scoop. Scott said that Leon was very difficult to work with. So much so that he passed the book off to Kenny Casanova. I interviewed Kenny. He came on the show, and we talked about Leon, and because I know a little bit about what went on behind the scenes there. And Leon could be very demanding and very difficult, and he ended up passing away shortly after the book was started. But when you have a guy like that, John, that's maybe not so warm and fuzzy to deal with, you know where I'm going with it. Okay, so let's broach the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. I have not dealt with anyone of that level of I think probably the most demanding first person to work with was Dr. D. David Schultz.
Really, David?
David was, you know,
wow.
it was, and let me preface that by saying David's a great friend of mine. We got along extremely well. He was probably the most nitpicky about how the story was told and what details were included in the book and everything. But again, for me,
John, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it right now and for the whole world.
Okay.
Eddie Mansfield was here a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
It's no secret Eddie and David are dear, dear friends, have been for years. Okay.
Yeah.
Eddie Mansfield called David Schultz with me on the phone. Okay. Sucker never called me back. Will you tell him to call me? I want him on the show. Give him my phone number. Give him all the information you need to give him. I want him on the show.
You want David on the show?
Say again?
I'm sorry. But no, go ahead. Keep going.
No. I want him on our show.
Yeah.
I would love to have him on here. So he needs to pick up his phone, find my number on his messages. You know, David, if you're watching, Eddie Mansfield called you, you stinker. Pick up your phone and call me. All right. So go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah. That says where are we at? But David was, like I said, David became a good friend
to work with.
Yeah, again, it was. I think it's the perception, of who Dr. D. David Schultz is, and when you get to know him, I mean, you'll never have a truer friend. You'll never have, a more loyal and faithful friend and everything. But David was tough. David wanted it done right, and wanted to make sure that it was, that it was well edited. He wanted to make sure that it was the story he wanted told, and that's kind of come to be. I mean, that's my modus operandi is, okay, if I'm going to write a book, like I said, when I worked with Karen, I had one person I had to please, and that was Karen. When I wrote Candido's book, I had one person to please. Well, three. It was Johnny, and it was Chris's mom and dad. When I worked with Tracy was the opinion that mattered and everything. So, my goal is to tell their stories the way they want them told. And
John, how much input did Tammy have in Chris's book?
Tammy was unavailable throughout the duration of Chris's book.
Okay.
And also in regards to it was kind of a, this was Chris and this was Johnny and his family telling the story.
Gotcha.
So there was, and I will tell you, we dealt with Tammy as right down the middle as we could. There were a lot of quotes from different people, and there were, there was the quote, well, now we don't have to pretend to be nice to her. And then there was the other quote, they never got to get married. They never got to have kids. And, say what you want about different things, stuff like that. He loved her. He absolutely loved her. And eyes are good. They'd still be together if he was here, if he was around. So, yeah.
And that's why I asked is I knew Tammy for quite a while, and I knew Chris. Again, the last show he did was for me. Yeah. And a lot of people don't know that because it wasn't publicized. But the interesting thing is that as long as I've known Chris Candido, he was always a sweet, gentle guy. Never had airs about him. He never pretended to be anything other than a guy from Jersey that got lucky.
Now, one of my favorite stories was when I heard Jake Manning telling a podcast that we put in the book, and he was brand new, green, nervous. I think working his first show for IWA Mid-South. Yeah, he's sitting in the kitchen where it was a kitchen area that was like the gorilla position to go out to the ring at whatever venue they were working. And Jake's sitting in there by himself. He's nervous, and there's nobody else in the room. Candido comes walking in. There's a mirror over the sink. He gets a step stool because he's a short guy. He gets a step stool, gets up in the mirror, checking, puts on this whole Buster Keaton comedy routine, fixing himself in the mirror, just for this one green kid. Chris doesn't even know from anybody, And he said it just meant so much that he did that. And then after the match, Chris going to the promoter and saying, "This kid's worked their tail off. I think you need to hire him again."
And he was funny as shit. Too. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
He was a natural comedian. He was hilarious.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just entertaining.
I
That's somebody I wish I could have known, because my goodness,
I have his match, and it's gold to me.
yeah.
It was the second to last match on the show, but it may as well have been the first through the last, because it was solid gold. This match.
Anybody who hasn't seen it should see
Dynamite.
Yeah. Anybody who hasn't seen it should look. That there was a 4-on-4 match he did for IWA Mid-South.
Yeah.
I know Punk was involved in it. Cesaro was involved in it. I think Nigel McGuinness might have been. And it's just it's 12 minutes of comedy gold, and it was all.
Oh my
Chris
God.
put the whole, where they're pulling weapons out of people's trunks and everything. Somebody pulls out a dumbbell, looks like it's about 2 pounds, and Chris goes straight down with it, like it weighs 100 pounds. And 2 seconds into the match, his pants are down, and he gets body slammed. Each one of the 4 guys tags in, body slams him and then the ref body slams him, and his pants are still hanging down.
Yeah.
It's just one thing after another. I mean, just a showman,
John, why are wrestling books so popular? Why do people clamor to buy wrestling related material? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I hope they don't ever start to question it, because it's I make some nice money sometimes off of it, but it's just great stories. I mean, why do football fans buy football books? Why do hockey fans want to hear hockey stories? I mean, the stories behind the scenes sometimes are as interesting as what goes on in the ring, and people want to know, well, how did this happen? How did this unfold? I mean, you could write 100 books on Ali versus Inoki. You could write 100 books on the Tupelo concession stand brawl, or the Montreal Screwjob, and people would buy and read every single one of them. And the off chance there's one new nugget of information they don't know. I know I'm that way with Andy Kaufman. Anytime I get a chance to hear more details on him.
John, honest to God, I'm not even bullshitting you, and I swear to you, this is a straight up shoot. I've had people say to me, Angelo, you should write a book about your life in wrestling. I said, I can't do it, and I'll never do it, because people wouldn't buy it. They never believed that all this shit happened. They would never believe it happened. I could sell, a psychic book or a pseudo-religious book far quicker and faster than I could a wrestling book, because nobody they wouldn't believe it. It's almost like it's like fiction. A lot of what you've been around wrestlers a long time, John. Some of the crap that comes out of their mouth is like, is this for real? Like, you got to question it sometimes. So I'm serious.
Yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah,
and if I proceeded to write a book about my life in wrestling, no one would, pardon my language, wouldn't freaking believe it. I was almost going to drop an F-bomb, but there's a lady present.
Here's what I'll say to that too, is a book by an Angelo DeCipio would be just like, I've got Madman Pondo's book. I published Chris Michaels' book, which he wrote all of by himself. Guys like that, they were not the headliners. They were not the big stars or anything like that. They were in the locker room with everybody. They've run into everybody. They've worked with everybody and stuff like that, And if you were to go somewhere and see, let's say, okay, I can buy Bobby Blaze's book, or I can buy Hulk Hogan's book, which was published by the WWE. Which one do I want to read? I want to read Bobby Blaze's book.
Absolutely.
Bobby's going to have way better stories.
Yep.
Bobby's going to tell you, got to have a whole
Blaze every day,
because he's got, he's not trying to present an image or whatever. And Bobby's a phenomenal guy. Another person I haven't met in person, but somebody I've exchanged a lot of messages with, and become a big fan of one of his proteges, Judy Ray Hendricks, who's at OVW right now too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amelia, you're up to bat, kid. Go for it.
Well, let me just go back to what you were saying, because the WWE is going to put what they're going to want you to believe, and another author is going to tell you the truth, basically, of what they're going to want you to really know, the truth behind the scenes.
Just the important thing about with Scott Teal and Ian Douglas and Kenny Casanova and Mark James and myself and so many others, the important thing is we're not part of that machine. We're not here to present the Vince McMahon version of wrestling history.
You're there to tell the truth.
Exactly. And the best example of that is you look at the history of women's wrestling. If you go to the WWE, it's all about the Fabulous Moolah. It's all about Mae Young. They're not going to
God,
tell you about
sure.
Mildred Burke.
No.
They're not going to tell you Mildred Burke sold out buildings. She was the main eventer, and she was
Yes.
the reason why Mae Young was a main eventer. You know,
Yes.
and I don't care how good the Fabulous Moolah was. I don't think she could have
And
taken.
she trained them hard. Her wrestling school,
Yeah.
she trained them hard. Yes.
Amelia, you're not going to
Yes.
hear about Sweet Georgia Peach from the WWE.
No.
No.
You know,
No.
and a lot of people
No.
don't know who Sweet
No.
Georgia Peach was. She was the first black female wrestler
Yes.
ever.
Yes.
And nobody, and her name has almost lost to history.
Very
That
lost.
is until next week when we will
Mhm.
revive her name as
Mhm.
part of Wrestling with the Future's Salute the Black History Month.
Absolutely.
And I'll be joined by another author on that show, my dear friend Nikita Brezhnikov, the author of When It Was Real. Great book.
Nikita wrote a fantastic book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
I'd say piggybacking off of that, there's a wonderful documentary. It's available on Amazon. It's called, I think it's called Girl Wrestler.
Yes.
It is the story of Babs Wingo, Ethel Johnson, and Marva Scott, all three who were sisters, three African American ladies in the 1950s. It is wonderfully done. It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
But that's a story WWE won't tell you either. You know, they didn't work. They didn't work for Vince. They didn't work for Vince Senior. So they don't exist.
Right, exactly.
You know? Wahoo barely exists. They put him in as a legacy induction, and they never even told Karen. You know, Karen found out about it. You know, hearing it from someone else.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Barbara Goodish and Bruiser Brody. You know.
Absolutely. Oh, definitely.
Come on.
Oh, I love her. Barbara's a very dear friend. Very dear friend of mine.
It's been a wonderful evening at SICW, Herb Simmons promotion with her and with David. And David just kept her laughing the whole night. We just had a ball hanging out.
John, we just had Herb. He was just here.
Yeah.
He was here a month ago.
Man, Herb's great.
A month ago.
Herb is great.
And he's coming back. As a matter of fact, Herb's coming back. Go ahead, Amelia. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No,
again.
you're fine.
My bad.
Hey, there's another guy who's got stories that, I mean, you know, if it's like, you know, do I want to go sit? Do I want to listen to Brutus Beefcake? Tell some stories, and nothing against Brutus.
God, please.
Do I want to listen to Brutus, or do I want to listen to Herb? Herb's going to have some amazing stories.
Oh my
God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Herb, you know, Herb will take the time with you too. You know, where
Oh, he did.
Oh yeah.
We had as much time with Herb as we wanted. I unfortunately I have time constraints because of sponsors, but I could have gone 2-3 hours with Herb with standing on my head.
Let me ask you this: have you had Rock Riddle?
I have not. I know Rock. Rock is a friend of mine.
I'll tell you, that's one of my favorite. That is one of my favorite people in the world to talk to. When I first met him, I did not know the name. I Googled it real quick, and you know, when I got the chance, I said, "I understand you used to be on the Gong Show," and struck it off. It had Chuck Bear stories, and I mean, just just a wonderful, fun guy to be around, and tells great stories. And it was really cool. Actually, this goes back to last year around this time. My dad's in the hospital, and I was watching. I had pulled up an episode of Fernwood Tonight, which is the old show with Martin.
Oh my God,
on YouTube, just to give it a shot, because I'm a Gilbert Godfrey
it was a
podcast
spin-off
fan.
of Mary Hartman.
Oh yes, I remember that show.
I just gave my age away.
Randomly, I found an episode called The Wrestler. So I turn it on, and there's special guests that I cannot remember the wrestler character's name, and they open the curtain. Here he comes. It's freaking Rock Riddle. So I immediately messaged him like, Rock, I think you're on TV right now. And he's like, yeah, I remember that night. I made up all my own dialogue. It was oh gosh, what a character.
I'll tell you what, another guy that's a hell of a storyteller. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, is Rip Rogers.
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh my! Has anyone ever come to you and suggested maybe a Rip Rogers book? He's got to have about 5 books in him.
He had a guy. There was a guy. I guess the guy who runs the promotion over at Saudi Arabia. It was like the Rip Rogers rules for. It was more of a kind of a wisdom and. You know, Rip Rogers' wisdom for being in pro wrestling. But yeah, I mean, as a storyteller, I talked to him when I did Bluegrass Brawlers. He gave me the greatest Randy Savage story about Randy Savage in the Waffle House with the police dog. That one's in the book.
Yes.
I know that story. He gave me a couple of stories with for Scott Romer's book. And I've had a chance to talk to him a couple different times.
Yeah.
Funny guy. And I mean, and anybody's got, you know, it was one of the fun things too this last time around with Bluegrass Brawlers was talking to guys like Doug Basham and Nick Dinsmore and hearing the Rich Rogers stories from them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you heard John mention Scott Romer. You don't
Yeah.
know who Scott Romer is. He's an amazing guy, been in the wrestling business a long time. He also happens to be the son-in-law of Dick the Bruiser.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
I'm old.
Only as old as you feel.
Scott's yeah, it's
Amelia, that kind of
Scott's
shit's
got
gonna get you in
100
trouble.
stories too. So.
Go ahead, Amelia. You're up.
If you have, who else would you like to interview for a book that you haven't yet?
Oh, I'd love to work with Ricky Morton.
Mm-hmm.
We've
I love Ricky.
had some very
Oh,
brief
yes.
discussions about it. I know Ricky's kind of like I'm still making my story up and going. And he's out there
Mm-hmm.
getting his son over right now, and I think he's
Mm-hmm.
busier than he's been in I don't know a while. But I would love to work with
Mm-hmm.
Ricky. Leilani Kai, someone else I've let know. Yeah, I would love to work with her.
Mm-hmm.
My dream book would be somebody like Kevin Von Erich. I was
Oh,
a big
yes.
world class fan.
Wow.
Back in
Mm-hmm.
the day, I know the Von Erichs. He was my favorite. Any one of the Von Erichs, I would love.
Yeah.
That whole era, the whole WCW. I love the Simpson Boys back then too. I remember watching.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
But anybody from that particular era or realm would be a lot of fun.
I'll tell you what, John.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you some stories about Ricky Morton. He stayed at my house for 2 days here in New Jersey. But
That's enough for a
I
book.
don't think you'd have to sell. You'd have to sell that book with a plain brown wrapper. It's a
Well, the story Dutchman
oriented.
tells, and I think it was a Dutch's second book about how Ricky's his second or third divorce happened. When that's do you know that tale?
I do. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. So it's the way
I ain't going there.
where his wife made him sit down and watch Tully on TBN until he started telling stories.
Oh, man.
It was an amazing story. But no, a guy like Ricky would be a lot of Ricky. I mean, just
Yeah, I had Ricky and Robert. They stayed at my house here in New Jersey for 2 days. I'm going to tell you what. We didn't sleep for 2 days. We ate, and they did nothing but tell stories, eat, and smoke for 2 days. How they slept, where they slept, I don't know. I know I didn't sleep. Okay, but when they left, I slept for like 4 days afterward.
Sure. Yeah.
They worked for me here. Amelia, go ahead, take care of it. Why don't you bring us home, Amelia, and then we'll wrap it up.
You go ahead. I know you had another question you had to ask.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, I know that. I just want to let everyone know that I think today was the anniversary of George the Animal Steel. Would you ever wanted to interview him? And had the chance?
Never had the opportunity to meet him, but yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, just to be able to talk to him about playing.
Oh, absolutely.
George Johnson and Ed Wood.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie.
And
yes.
that would make a fantastic bio. Is George? I mean, because he had his whole pro wrestling life, but he had his secret life as a high school teacher and a football coach.
Yes.
You didn't imagine that for 2 days with the Animal Steel.
I know.
Yeah.
I love it. His character was so awesome.
Scary thought, isn't it? I want you to think about it. Could you imagine, Amelia, being a student in his class and having this man walk in?
I would have been like, who's this?
Met Jim Myers, by the way. George the Animal Steel is Jim Myers. If you've ever met Jim Myers, he would be quick to point out there's two people inside this body. Which one do you want? Do you want George or do you want Jim? Because Jim would sit down and speak to you like we're speaking now. But if you wanted George, you would get the hey, oh, you'd get that. He'd give it to you.
I think George Myers.
He was keenly aware that he was two people. And he was very quick to point out, which one do you want? It's your money. Who you paying for?
Absolutely.
John, I'll tell you what, it's never a dull moment when you're here. I want to show people once again the books. All these books are available by John Cosper. They are all available on Amazon.com. John, the people want to get a hold of you. Social media. You have email, letter rip.
All right.
Yes.
If you want to look at the wrestling books, they're at eatsleepwrestle.com.
Mhm.
Really enjoy sharing about the fiction books with you guys tonight. I'm really proud of a lot of these
Mhm.
stories and would love to get more people picking them up and reading them. They can find my fiction stuff and actually some of my short films at
Mhm.
johncosper.com. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I
Mhm.
think Eat Sleep Wrestle is my wrestling page. John Cosper
Mhm.
Author Facebook page.
Mhm.
Instagram is John Cosper Author. I think that's and my Twitter is at John Cosper.
Mhm.
Um, but come find me again, johncosper.com or eatsleepwrestle.com, and they both link to each other. So if you're on one
Mhm.
site, you can take a look at
Fabulous.
the fiction books and then hop over and look at the wrestling books and vice versa.
Incredible. It's an
Awesome.
amazing body of work.
Yes.
If you have not a John Cosper book in your library, well, what the hell are you waiting for?
Right.
Hop on Amazon.com.
Absolutely.
There are plenty. I mean, you want wrestling, you want
Mhm.
fiction, you want historical fiction, you want
We got a bunch of them.
fantasy, you want reality.
Mhm.
What do you want? We've got it for you.
Yes.
Well, John has it for you. I
There
don't
we
have
go.
it
Yeah,
all.
you go.
I got all these
John
in
has
stock.
it
I've
all.
actually still got a couple of Tracy Smothers signed by Tracy. So
Mhm.
somebody
Oh,
wants
there
to
you
grab one of
go.
those.
All
Terrific.
right.
Yep. Got Pondo signed by Pondo, Victoria signed by Victoria, Candido signed by Johnny and myself, and Wahoo signed by Karen and myself. This is
Awesome.
Black History Month. Come pick, other than else, pick up a copy of the original Black Panther, learn about the original
Oh.
African American
Yeah.
superstars for wrestling, and
And
Mhm.
very appropriate for Black History
Mhm.
Month.
and I do have sometime next month the new edition of Bluegrass Brawlers will be coming out, which is
Mhm.
1.5 times the length story wise that the original was, and Louisville from 1877 all the way up through present day.
Amazing. John Cosper, you are an amazing guest. You are
Yes.
welcome here anytime you damn well please, my friend. Let
Mhm.
me know when the next book comes up. We will be I want
Absolutely.
to be the first one to put it out.
I'll absolutely
Absolutely.
let you know. Pleasure
My
as always.
friend, take care.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, John. I'm going to
Yes.
let you go. I'm going to hang out with Amelia for a second. All right.
All right.
Yes.
I'll talk to you
Thank
guys later.
you.
Thank
John
you so much,
Cosper,
guys.
everybody. Good night,
Thank you,
John.
guys.
Good night. My
Bye-bye.
dad said thank you for that Wahoo book. It brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, good
It
stuff.
did.
I'll tell you what. That
Yes.
was an amazing guest. John Cosper is always
Mhm.
a fantastic guest
Oh
to have.
yes. That's my dad's favorite wrestler of
Well,
all
let's
time.
talk about next week. We have a couple of amazing shows next week.
Mhm.
It is the long anticipated return of the one, the only Nicola Roberts, baby doll.
I've always
She's
wanted to meet
coming
her.
back home to Wrestling with the Future.
Absolutely.
Because Papa Bear is here.
Yes,
Come
thank
on, baby
you.
doll. I'm here.
All right.
Then we've got on Thursday, and that's Tuesday of
Night
next week.
Tuesday. Mhm.
And on Thursday of next week, a salute to Black History Month,
Mhm.
wrestling style. We're going to
Mhm.
feature some of the greatest African American wrestlers with my dear friend and author, Nikita Brezhnikov. You heard me mention his name on the show tonight.
Mhm.
Nikita Brezhnikov's the author of When It Was Real, an amazing fan perspective wrestling book.
Mhm.
This guy has behind the scenes gems that you won't read anywhere else. And Nikki is a dear friend of the show. He's a good
Mhm.
friend of mine, and we're gonna have Nikita with us next week. Of course, Amelia,
Mhm.
you'll get to see Amelia next week, not
Mhm.
once but twice.
Right.
And I might even let her talk. No, actually, you did pretty good. And I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
You were engaging. See,
When I was
It-
4 years old or 5 years old, I think I don't remember how old I was. I was little.
is
And
this going to be a
Kamala.
long story?
No. Yeah, it's gonna be a long story. Remember Kamala, the wrestler Kamala?
Oh my God! Please,
When
yes.
I was little, we were at ringside, and I went, he's not scary. And I went up to him. He came up to me, scared me. His manager came back. I guess it was his persona, his character. And everybody was like, "Leave her alone." I was like, "Okay, you leave me alone." I was so scared. It was so funny.
Kamala was
Yes,
a
he was
very
scary,
dear,
but
sweet
that was his
man,
character, though. He was his character. And he
and
goes, "You
he
okay, little
actually.
girl?" He broke out a character to make sure I was okay. It was so funny.
It's funny that you're telling that story because Kamala
Mhm.
was a sweet, sweet man.
Mhm.
What a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Um, came into my father's restaurant
Mhm.
and had dinner with about 40 other wrestlers one night.
Mhm.
Pretty boy Larry Sharp brought them in for dinner after a big event.
Mhm.
And can imagine this, Amelia.
Mhm.
Imagine this. You're a
Mhm.
wrestling fan, right?
Right. Right.
In this bar, you've got both Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans,
Uh huh.
Fatu and Samu,
Uh huh.
the other Samoans. You've got Cowboy Bob Orton,
Yes.
Larry Sharp. You've got Kamala,
Uh huh.
Stan Hansen. You've
Mhm.
got Junkyard Dog. You have oh God, Chief Thunder Mountain.
Mhm.
You've got Johnny Hot Body. Oh, and the one more. Who the hell am I missing? Oh God, I'm missing somebody. Who the hell am I missing? Oh shit, who the hell am I missing? I'm missing one more. I'm missing a biggie. Who am I missing? Shit. Um, Bob Orton, Kamala. I remember who it was.
Mhm.
I remembered who it was. It was Larry Zabisco.
Okay.
I forgot. I'm sorry, Larry. And Larry's a friend of the show, and Larry's a friend of mine, and Larry's been on the show like a dozen times already.
Mhm.
And he's coming back.
Mhm.
He'll be back. But yeah, imagine that you're a wrestling fan, and all of these characters are in the bar
Uh
one night only.
huh.
Amazing. Oh my God, what a night that was. That was my father's bar, my late father. I miss you, Papa. And thank you everyone for the condolences and the well wishes. Yeah, I lost my father on January 21st, and we're
Mhm.
still getting condolence emails, and thank you for them.
Yes.
We appreciate it. And
Uh,
it's
and
been
again, accept my
difficult, but
condolences. How's Mama?
Mama is hanging in there, kiddo.
Tell her I said hi.
Mama is tough. You know,
Yes.
Mama's a tough cookie.
Tell her I said hello.
We're all
Yeah.
the Scipio crew. We're
Yeah.
pretty tough crew.
Tell her I said
We're pretty
hello.
tough. I will absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, what do you got on your agenda? What's happening in the world of Amelia Firecracker Chapman?
Just doing lots of work and doing my research and getting a list put together for you for guests.
I keep wanting to call you Amelia Firecracker Baricua, but
Whatever.
so
Just as
what?
the South says, don't call me late for dinner.
I hear you, right?
Right?
So, what? Let me ask you a question. Okay,
Uh-huh.
you are the new co-host,
Yes,
so
sir.
you're going to have some input. What would
Yes.
you like to see happen on the show? Who would you like to have here?
Oh,
I
well,
know you
like,
wanted baby dolls. Okay, so
yes.
baby dolls coming.
I was
Who else
thinking
you want?
maybe for Bobby Fulton and Dylan, maybe to come on the
Okay, I'll tell
show.
you what. I'm going to put you in charge of that. Reach
Yeah.
out to them
hmm
and make the invite. You
Okay.
got it. You
Okay.
get them. If you get them on, we can do it.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm still
Let's
waiting
see
on
if you
Scott
prove your
Casey.
metal here, kid.
And
Prove
Scott
your metal.
Casey, how's he doing? I know he had a car accident recently. I haven't heard from him.
Who's that?
Scott Casey. I know he had a car. He
Oh,
was in a car accident recently.
he messed up his our friend
hmm
Cowboy Scott Casey.
hmm
No fender bender. He banged up his
hmm
foot. It's
hmm
still hurting him. Um, actually, I was going to have Scott on.
Tonight, right?
It was supposed to be tonight,
hmm
but because of his
This car
little
accident.
fender bender,
hmm
his little faux pas,
hmm
we had John Cosper on. But
hmm
John is a hell of amazing guest.
Oh,
He
I
really is.
love his books.
I love
The
having
titles he comes up with. That's what intrigues me. Is a lot of
yeah.
the time the titles.
The other, I tell you what I'd like to do.
hmm
I want to put you in charge of something.
Okay.
My dog is barking. Why is my dog barking? We have a history on the show, a tradition we do called Ladies Night Out.
Okay.
We've done 3 versions of Ladies Night Out.
Okay.
I'm going to put you, young lady.
hmm
You are in charge of booking, producing, and scheduling the
Okay.
next version of Ladies Night Out, Volume 4.
Okay.
Okay? Find out who you want on the show, get them, book
Okay.
them, confirm it with me first.
Of course.
Okay? Because I'm Papa Bear, I'm the boss man.
That's
Right?
what I call you.
There you go. Exactly.
hmm
So, and whoever you want to have on,
hmm
we'll book the show. We'll do
Absolutely.
Ladies Night Out. And they're very popular. We've had Princess Victoria, Judy
hmm
Martin, Casey Carlisle, Jennifer Lopez, We've had oh my goodness. Oh, who the hell am I missing? Everybody. I'm missing a lot of people. I mentioned Judy Martin. Yeah, we had Judy Martin.
Yes.
Okay. But we've had any number of incredible legends on the show. So and we've had Michaela Smith, of course, Samantha Starr with Baby Doll's daughter. We've had Bam Bam's daughter, of course, Miranda Gordy has been on the show. So there are a lot of female wrestlers out there that we can get. So you got a little bit of homework.
Okay.
I'm trusting you with some homework. There you go.
All right. Oh, you give me homework all the time.
Give everybody your social where they can reach out to you.
Okay.
How can people email you and all that? Tell everybody where they can get a hold of you at.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Well, tell them.
What my
tell them your email and tell them where people tell them where they can get a hold of you.
Okay. My Facebook is Amelia Valerio Chapman. You can reach me there or jeffameliac@gmail.com.
There you go. How difficult was that?
Not difficult at all. Sorry, I was getting another call. I had to get out of that.
wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com. And that's care of Mad Dog or care of Amelia. The other thing I want to tell people, if you've got something you want to promote,
yes.
If you have an event that's coming up and you want to get the word out, you want to be a guest on the show, hit me up.
Yes.
At wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com. Let us know what you need. We will go above and beyond the call of duty to put you on the air. We are available on more than 270 straight up shoot, 270 radio stations globally. We are on 2 television stations, Skynet in Canada and the BBC in England. That's television. That's real deal. We are not on on television domestically, and we do not want to be.
No.
There's too much bad wrestling programming.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be a part of that, and we will get jumped into that. I mean, jumbled into that.
Right.
We're not going to do that.
Wrestling's not wrestling anymore.
Hear us on the radio.
Yes.
Or on any number of our streaming sites we are on. Stitcher, Podbean, Podowl. We are on iTunes, Apple. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on any number of podcast platforms. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, we are on every single podcast platform. That's a fact.
Absolutely.
More than 300, and that's 306, to be honest with you. Now, it's that time, straight up on 8 o'clock, to say good night on behalf of Amelia Firecracker Chapman. I'm Mad Dog DeCipio. Take care of everybody. I'm on dentures. Take care, everybody, as we continue to wrestle with the future.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.